Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the show. First show of 2025. It is me, Chris, and of course, we're here with Jimmy.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Back
I don't.
at it.
It feels like it's been about 3 months since I've seen you, but
I know, right? Yeah, a lot of stuff going on for sure.
busy,
But
busy. The life of a hockey parent.
oh my gosh. Yeah. And yeah, we had this issue where the rink went down but that has caused us to like do all this pickup games or alternate schedule and find
Right.
another team elsewhere. So I feel like we're getting more hockey because our rink went down and just driving all over the place. So yeah, what a
Yeah, it's
mess.
crazy. So I know that historically we've called Tuesday Trash Talking Tuesday,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but I think this year, and maybe it'll be just this year, I think we're going to change it. I think it's now going to be called 2A Tuesday.
2A Tuesday. Oh, okay.
So here's why I think it's important. So I think that this year is going to be probably, man, it's probably going to be the singularly most important year for the Second Amendment in our courts that we'll ever have in history. I think there's going to be a lot of settled. Right now, currently, there's 50 cases within the court systems feeding their way up to ultimately the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has already heard oral arguments on 2 of the 3 that they've granted cert to. And they cover a whole bunch of different issues pertaining to the Second Amendment. So I think there's a lot that we can talk about as far as where. Now keep in mind, not like I said, there's 50 active cases right now. 3 of them are in the Supreme Court. The rest of them are strung amongst the circuit courts, the courts of appeals, and there are some that are even local. Now, 2 out of the 3 that are in the Supreme Court right now are Maryland cases.
Okay.
One of them is, I think it's Bianchi v. Brown, which is a challenge to Maryland's assault weapon ban, basically.
Yep.
And some of these other cases from these other circuits are kind of the same. A push against New York's ban, a push against California's ban. But these cases get put on hold because Bianchi has made it to the Supreme Court. So when the Supreme Court rules on this particular case, that's going to be the law of the land. So those other cases are either going to go away because the Supreme Court has ruled on similar facts, similar facts in that case are going to make these other cases go away.
Set the precedent. Yeah.
Yep. So, but it's going to be there. There's another case that's out there, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. That's in one of the appeals courts, talking about is it unconstitutional for the government to say that a convicted felon can no longer possess a firearm after they've done their time? Because there's nothing in the Constitution that says that, because you did this, you no longer have this right. If it's an inherent right, it's an inherent right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we do eliminate rights, or you have you have the ability to forfeit your rights based on actions you take.
Right.
But is that established in this, in the Constitution, or is that established in other precedents, or is it a good law?
Right.
I don't know if it's not addressed well. that kind of thing. I don't know. That's a good question. Interesting.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of them out there, and actually, what I love is these the anti-Second Amendment establishment is so hell bent on and so obsessed with this topic that they basically did a lot of work for us.
Mm.
So Giffords, I don't know if you know who that is, Gabby Gifford, the congresswoman that was
Oh
shot,
yes. Hmm.
um, almost a decade ago, I think now,
Hmm.
um, in Arizona. Um, her foundation, her not her foundation, but the Giffords Law Center um, has basically consolidated a list of every single active Second Amendment case in the country. So we have, every circuit, even down as far as um, uh, the local courts throughout the country. So, like, I'll give you an example: Maryland shall issue versus Montgomery County. That's here in Maryland. That's
Hmm.
currently in the Fourth Circuit. Now, I don't specifically know what that case is about. Oh, it has to do with their sensitive place law. Does that make sense? Do you know what that is?
No. Well, no, not just by that.
Basically, they're contesting. So Montgomery County, Maryland, tried to um, they put into place a law within the county that you can carry a firearm because the Supreme Court has said that you have the right to carry a firearm. What they tried to do to thwart that is say, well, all these places, even somebody else's private property without their permission, is considered a sensitive place. So you can't carry in any of these places,
Hmm.
grocery stores, uh, any other stores, shopping malls, whatever. So, you know, they're saying they basically made it so it would be virtually impossible. So even though the law says yes, you have the right, the Supreme Court says yes, you have the right to carry. In Montgomery County, they made it so that basically you would never be able to, and they would be able to prosecute you based on their county law
Hmm.
to do it. Even and to the extent that it was, if I came to your house and I was carrying, and a police officer saw me enter your home with a firearm, and I didn't have your permission, and they came and asked you, hey, did you give him permission to carry on your property? And you said no, they could arrest me,
Hmm.
even though it's private property.
Hmm.
So that one's in the Fourth Circuit right now. And again, this is another one. It's just another one. These are all going to trickle. Our court system is not fast, but a lot of these stand a really high chance of trickling up to the Supreme Court to be decided. So if that's the case, the three that they're looking at right now, that the Supreme Court is actually looking at right now, uh, are going to be huge because it's the magazine, the magazine bans, the firearm bans, uh, uh, what do they call it? Large capacity magazines, the
Yep. High
standard
capacity.
one, the standard ones that are issued with every single one. So the large capacity magazines, the assault weapons bans, and there's one other. Oh, the there's another one that has to do with an agency's ability, an agency not legislature, so like the ATF or the IRS, their ability to create rules
Hmm.
that impact your rights. So like the ATF has the short barrel uh, ban, or the ban on, you can't just go out and buy a suppressor. You have to get a stamp, you have to get a license, you have to pay $1,000 or whatever it is, because the ATF made a rule that's not in any legislation. So it's been challenged,
Mm.
and the Supreme Court has already come out on that, and in another case, not specific to the ATF, but specific in the fact that what they came back and said is a non-legislative agency does not have the right to create rules like that. It has to
Yeah.
come from you have to be able to cite legislation that you're creating that rule to. So, and of course, I think that was heard through the courts. It went back to the Supreme Court, and I'm not sure that they've made a final ruling on that. I'd have to go check. But that's huge too. So if all this, if those three cases really are heard and a decision is given by the Supreme Court in 2025, that pretty much destroys the case of any of these states: California, New York, Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, to some extent. It really destroys their case on all these things that they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And of course, going back to Heller, which is already the law of the land, they have to, that's why they came up with these other things to try to thwart Heller, where it basically says, a gun, you can't ban a gun that's considered in common use, but they keep going after ARs, which is the highly sold weapon in the United States.
Yep.
But their claim is that it's not a weapon in common use. Okay, it's the most bought weapon in the country.
Yeah.
So I think we can do a series on these cases just to show people what's out there, yeah, well, actually, they're saying 1, 2, 3. They're saying 4 of these cases are currently at the Supreme Court. So you got Bianchi v. Brown, you got Vincent v. Garland, United States versus Rahimi. I think the Rahimi case is the one I was talking about with the person convicted of a felony, and United States v. Jackson. So these are all Second Amendment cases that are now up at the Supreme Court. And what I think I understand is that 3 of those cases, all of them but Rahimi, because Rahimi's not on a Rahimi's different in that it's on a person's right to possess a firearm, where the other 3 are states trying to ban firearms or portions of firearms, or accessories to firearms. So I think what I hear is that they may be enjoining those 3 cases together to have basically one ruling that'll cover all 3 of them, which will be huge, because if they do that and they rule in favor of the plaintiffs, then that nullifies and destroys virtually every single one of these states' laws, basically for who knows how long, forever maybe.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. It's interesting to see the wave of these litigations, I guess. It's I do find it very interesting. Maybe the timing. Do you think that this lawfare is the result of the change in the Supreme Court seats, and we're now kind of seeing that trickle effect that people feel more open to challenge these laws? Yeah, it's an interesting topic to consider, and maybe because I grew up in a time where these laws have been in place. There's been all kinds of restrictions on guns, and only getting worse, obviously. But like, as I become more an adult and more aware of, I guess, laws and looking back and really questioning, well, it doesn't make sense we have any of these laws because the Constitution seems e extremely clear and
Right.
evident. What part of "shall not be infringed" do you not understand?
Right.
So it really begs the question, how do we get here? Why do we need to challenge all I mean, who's
Well, we have to get we got here because of politics.
right.
Uh, and that plain and simple. I mean,
But how did
that's
they let that happen, right? Like, how did what
because it was
court
their agenda.
systems yeah, but the
I mean,
court system decided to
that
rule on that.
particular party's agenda was to thwart the public's ability to own and possess anything that they deemed not possessible by the general public. Now they all own them. I mean,
Mhm.
I've seen Democratic senators and Democratic comment. Well, I own an AR-15, and blah, blah, blah. Well, but you're also the ones who are pushing forward this legislation to get rid of them. I bet you won't get rid of yours.
Or your protection details,
Right.
yeah. So then, well, because these states have kind of taken the law into their own hands,
Hmm.
will these Supreme Court rulings, while they effectively nullify maybe some of their other decisions, it seems like it doesn't stop them from just declaring that, well, this is what we're going to do. What are
Yeah.
you going to do about it? We're going to ban these guns. We're seeing, just on a similar note, the states that are pushing back on the immigration stuff, where the immigration ICE head of ICE plans to deport everybody. I'm just going to broadly um, mention that, but states are saying, well, no, we're not going to allow you to do that. It's a federal ruling or federal decision versus these states' decisions. How's that going to play out?
Well, I think that what the states are saying in that regard are, we're not going to help you. In other words, if we have somebody detained, we're just not going to call you and tell you. Basically, it's up to you to figure out that we have them in captivity for whatever other reason that they're arrested. If you can figure it out, we're not going to stop you, but we're not
Mm.
going to assist you. And that's fine until they decide, until one of these sheriffs or police chiefs or mayors or congressmen tries to actually stop
Hmm.
one of these federal agents from doing their business, and then their ass is going to jail.
I feel like that's what they've said they intend to do. They do intend to inhibit these operations and block them. And
Perfect.
yeah, perfect. Well, yeah, they're actually violating the law. But getting back to the 2A decisions and things like that, if a judge still rules like, hey, this is a law that's on the books, and this is how we're going to interpret it. Regardless, they're going to sidestep the Constitution
Sure,
as they.
and at the local level, I think at the local level, let's use Montgomery County as a for those of you who don't know, Montgomery County, Maryland is like the second most liberal county in the United States, and it happens to be our neighboring county. Um, sure, are there judges like Judge Egron in New York who are still going to uh, do whatever the hell they want when it comes to deciding cases like this? Sure. Ultimately, uh, they're going to be made to look like jackasses for doing it because the appellate courts, and we've seen a little bit of movement on this, even some of the appellate courts like the Ninth Circuit that are kind of liberal, the more liberal, I think the Fourth Circuit's kind of liberal. But even they have, after the Bruin decision from the Supreme Court, have come back, and this is where you've seen a couple of times last year where Amy Coney Barrett,
Mm.
um, when one of the circuit courts were given a case and they were about to make a decision, Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett went back to them publicly and said, before you render your decision, you need to explain to me how, if your decision is going to be X, Y, or Z, you need to explain to me how that works with our decision in Bruin. So the
Mhm.
Supreme Court justices are looking at these courts. So each Supreme Court justice is in charge of a circuit. So if one of these cases is in that circuit, that Supreme Court justice has an obligation to say, "Hey, before you rule on this, understand that this is what Bruin says. This is our decision. We are the Supreme Court of the United States. So you need to be able to explain how your decision fits within the framework of what we've already established." So yes, locally, these elected judges who got elected in these areas for a
Yeah.
reason. Yes, they may very well decide in one way, but it's going to get destroyed virtually immediately. So I don't worry too much about it. I mean, it sucks for the person because you may end up getting jail time. But then that also opens up the county to civil litigation
Mhm.
once it's thrown out because it doesn't match the law, the federal, what the federal court has said. So it's a double-edged sword, and after they get sued enough a couple of times for imprisoning somebody or arresting somebody, which would be an illegal arrest, you were arrested for your constitutional right. It's no different than these what are they called? First Amendment auditors who
Mhm.
go out on the street and with a video camera, and a police department comes up and asks them what they're doing, and they're like, nothing, just out on a public sidewalk filming. The police don't like it and they arrest them. There's been countless lawsuits that Hagerstown actually just paid one last year of like $42,000 to a guy that was outside the prison in Hagerstown filming from the street. State police didn't like it, went out there, detained, handcuffed, and then ultimately arrested the guy. And then the county settled
Mm.
with him for like $42,000 for illegally arresting him in violation of his constitutional rights.
Right.
So I mean, it may take that. It may take a county like Montgomery County losing, $500,000 before they realize that you can continue to do it, but you're going to continue to cost your citizens in your county a lot of money.
Interestingly, I think this next probably 2 years or so is gonna be a crucial time period because the success of, I think, these cases,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I guess just a general shift is gonna be impacted by the success of Donald Trump and his agenda, really, because I think just, the mentality that we've seen since the November election, before he's even taken office, people have kind of shifted. The mentality has shifted to, all right, I'm done. We're done playing your game now.
Yep.
We've been dealing with this nonsense for several years, and we're not standing for it. We're not afraid to speak, and we're not afraid to speak up anymore because it's becoming much more widely accepted to call out the garbage, call
Sure.
out the nonsense. Um, so if that continues, if his items are successful, um, in a clear way, I
Mm-hmm.
think is going to really set the tone for how we continue, what our trajectory will be as a nation. And if things like this won't stand, and
Yeah.
we're not going to play the games anymore, we're going to live by our Constitution. We're going to stick to our guns,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Literally.
Yeah, and we're going to become a stronger, no nonsense nation.
Yep.
I think that's the trajectory we're heading on now. That's the new mentality, and
Great.
you can play dress up all you want and whine and scream and on the internet, and that's what you do. Okay, great. Nobody's gonna put up with it,
Yeah.
and what
100%.
you're gonna do is you're gonna do, but you have no power anymore. You can whine and cry and scream to your school superintendent and say that your kid needs to have a litter box or something, we're not going to play that game anymore. Like, you can whine and cry and scream, go somewhere else and do that. You can set up your own school program if you're going to do that stuff. We're going to focus on actually educating our children, bringing them up and teaching them good values and setting them on the right path. We're just done with this. So like that's what I'm hoping to see, and I think this is going to play a part in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like you said, another thing that they're already freaking out. Obviously, I mean, Justin Trudeau resigning. There's a reason why he resigned this week. Uh, you know, these other countries that, like, you know, I think the president of Venezuela or Honduras said that, well, I'm just sending a warning to President Trump. Yeah, not a good idea not a good idea to put yourself in that limelight, because there are world leaders that tried to do what you're doing that are in much greater countries than yours that put themselves in the limelight and are now regretting it. So yeah, I mean, you're already seeing mass amounts of change. I hate to use the phrase kiss assery, but there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
And what another thing that's really just busting the bubble of the left right now is Judge Alito on the Supreme Court. I believe, I don't know if it's official or not, but he has said that he intends to retire next year.
Yeah.
So Trump is going to put another judge on the Supreme Court.
Well, is that the judge, or I thought there was isn't is it Sotomayor that's
Well,
expected?
Sotomayor is sick. She's
Yeah.
she's got what's the bad diabetes? Type 1.
Oh, is it type 1?
Yeah, type 1 I think is the bad one.
Mm.
And she hasn't been she had pretty poor health last year.
Well, and that's
So
why they've been
it could very well be that he gets to put 2 more on there. And that just kind of seals the deal for the next 40 years.
yeah, until they pack the court. But realistically, I don't see the chance of that.
Yeah. Well, and it wouldn't matter if they did, to be honest with you, because the next president who comes along that's in the other party is just going to do the same thing. I mean, we're going to ultimately end up with a fucking Supreme Court that has 51 justices on it.
Yeah.
And nobody wants that.
Yeah, and I really don't think it's gonna. I think as if we have a period of time, 10, 15 years or so, kind of in this situation, and people realize they're fine, calm down, like
Yeah.
nobody's they have this ghost of an authoritarian dictator who's going to actually come in and take your rights away and not allow you to do things. Nobody's doing that.
Right.
Nobody. And so once they eventually have to accept that that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
And
they're going to have to get over it, because I've already seen the heads exploding today, and I'm going to talk about this on Friday. Kind of what I was going to talk about Friday. You're not going to be here, Jimmy, so I'll just give you guys a preview. Are the things that are happening before Trump even takes office?
Yeah.
I mentioned Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, resigning. You have Facebook or Meta coming out today and saying that they've fired their third-party fact checkers, and they're going to have more of an X type
community notes
instead of community standards type thing. And I've already seen the heads exploding. I have a girl I went to high school with who posted on Facebook today, "Hi everybody, this is the last time you're going to see me. I'm here. I'm deleting my account on Friday when these changes go into effect. I can't be on a platform that doesn't have community standards and allows hate speech. And I'm like, good. See ya. So that, but these things are all happening. It's not coincidence that these things are happening a week before President Trump takes office.
No, no, exactly. But that's what I think, that the success of these things, these changes, eh, I think it's going to maybe be hard to discern, and because you can't see what didn't happen, right?
Right.
So the comparison now, we have a pretty good contrast with what happened in the last 4 years and the insanity that occurred during that time. But it's not going to be apples to apples. It's not going to be said
Right.
this is what happened, this didn't. So what's going to happen is many, many, many things are going to get better, and there's still going to be a couple things that people are going to be loud about and they're going to complain about.
Sure.
And that's okay. I feel like that, and I think that we're already starting to see some kind of arguments just kind of within the conservative side, and me, that's fine. Like, that's what I want. I want to hash that out, be able to like have conversations, and it's not vitriolic, if that's the right term, but
Yeah.
um, it's not the same. Just we can't possibly even remotely come close to an agreement. We can't find common ground, and because that's what we've seen in the last 4 years. Is like
Right.
most people are getting, so far apart, and all the reasonable people are now kind of shifting to one side, and then we can kind of have a little bit of disagreement here and there. So as long as that doesn't bubble up and cause too much of a fracture within the side, and start
Well,
yeah, like,
I think what
causing
you're
too much
getting at
division.
is you can have an intellectually honest disagreement about a policy. It's when it's not intellectually honest, which 90% of these are not.
Yeah,
That's when it becomes a problem, because if the basis of your argument is intellectually dishonest, then it's not something that can ever be solved, because it's not a true it's not a
yeah,
tr- it's not a true thing.
sure, and that's what we've seen.
Right.
I'm hesitant and concerned that some of that will continue, or and cause issues where all the good that's going to be done is not going to be evident,
Right.
and then we're going to see the pendulum swing back when we kind of really need to be driving on this train for you know the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
um until maybe it gets out of control. I don't see where that goes. I don't see where it goes bad. I'm sure that there's some point in time where the pendulum kind of has to correct,
At
but
least fall back to the middle somewhere.
I feel like we've kind of hit that middle ground trajectory, though. We're not there. I, if you We see exactly what a far left extremist group is. They're seeing that
Sure.
in public, in politics.
Yeah.
What those people, and largely anybody on the left generally thinks about what is a extreme right, what is
Mm.
a right wing extremist. Do you see any of that
Well,
in
that's to
especially
them,
in
that's
politics?
anybody that doesn't agree with them.
Yeah, yeah, but I'd really like to ask somebody to define
Right.
what do they think is a right wing extremist, because
Right.
you don't see any of that. You don't see
Mm.
actual racists in
Right.
Congress or in politics. You don't see people that are authoritarian and advocating for taking away people's rights and things like
Right.
that. That's not the case.
Right.
So
But you
where's
certainly see it on the left. You certainly see
absolutely,
you certainly
absolutely,
see them wanting to restrict your right of your First Amendment. You see it when they want to restrict your right of the second. The only people who are ever advocating for a restriction on a constitutional right are on the left.
exactly, exactly, and to be authoritarian and they
Yeah.
get to make the decisions.
Right.
It's so hypocritical. We probably talk about
And
all the
they
time.
do it to their own. The funny thing is they do it to their own party just as bad as they do it to everybody else. Because think about Nancy Pelosi. I mean, there's a reason why I don't mind, like you said earlier, I don't mind when the Republican Party argues with each other
Hmm.
over a policy, just, because we're not robots.
Yeah.
We're not, singular thought people within the party.
Yeah. Or,
Whereas
a sheep
Whereas
trying to,
Democrats, you don't toe the line, we're kicking you out of the party. Tulsi Gabbard, we're
yeah.
kicking you out of the party. RFK Jr. We're kicking. You don't see
Yeah.
that, and
Well,
that's why you don't see that on
yeah.
our side.
And just because we support Donald Trump or Vivek Ramaswamy or Elon Musk or whatever, it doesn't mean that I buy into everything they say and will just follow along. No,
Right.
I'm going to question it. I think
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk is insanely intelligent and is well thought out on a lot of things. Could he be wrong? Absolutely. Well, would I push back or would I question and look for an explanation on maybe some of the things that he says? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to blindly do that. So, yeah, I think that that's where we should be as a nation. We should be more huddled on this side like we are now and
Mm-hmm.
work out those agreements in, like you said, an intellectually honest capacity. So, that's the direction. That's why I think it seems reasonable and smart to stay uh, on this side
Yeah.
for the foreseeable future. I think we need to continue to get rid of, because all we've seen is the left go to the far extreme, and they're just out at this point. And they're going to be a loud minority, the very few people that are out there, but they're not going to be the majority, as we saw, as what it appeared to be in November.
Yeah.
Um, that's what it appears to be. I think people are trending that way. So I hope we continue to see that.
Yeah. Agree. So again, Friday, I'm gonna be here by myself. Jimmy's gonna be off to the. He's going up
Going to
to see.
see
He's going up to
Governor
see Justin
Trudeau.
Trudeau.
Yeah, I was going to go see the governor of the 51st state. um, but no, he's leaving, so we'll see.
Yeah, it's sad. He didn't tell you ahead of time, and he knew about your trip.
Maybe he's got some extra time now. Maybe he can
Yeah,
come
I
hang
mean, good. Yeah,
out.
yeah. Who knows?
I'll
Um,
teach him about, men, the differences between men and women. Yeah,
well,
good.
I don't think he's figured it out for himself yet, so
No, no.
he may need that help. But then, yeah, I'm excited about kind of launching this little mini series about these particular cases, so that people are aware, because you need to be aware, uh, because if you live in one of these states that is just going to, preach the narrative that they want to preach, and you're not paying attention to what is actually happening with these cases at the federal level, at the Supreme Court level, especially, um, you won't know how to fight back. You won't know that you have the right to fight back in some cases. So I think it's important, and so I'm excited to kind of get into some of these, and don't worry, Jimmy, I've already read some of them. So,
Sounds good.
but yeah, I'll be back Friday, and I hope you guys have a good rest of the week. Man, I don't know where you're listening from necessarily, but it's been cold as hell here, and we actually got snow yesterday. So
Yeah, it hasn't been bad. At least I get to stay home, but
yeah,
still
they did
working.
close, they did close our offices, but we still had to work.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I will be back on Friday, and Jimmy, have a great trip.
Thank you. I will see you guys.
All right,
Thanks.
see y'all.